Ooh, they keep saying that if you keep doing it, you'll go blind. Well, don't worry, because sovereign text and audio, 99% of the time. Of course, if you caught this morning, I am recording this actual episode on, the day before Thanksgiving. Of course, it's your Wednesday Sovereign Tech Patreon only Q&A, but on November 22nd, you would have caught the Patreon announcement that went out, which said that we will be doing the live Hangout Q&A, which actually I might have to do this one personally without video, but we'll see how that all shapes up. But that'll be on the 26th that we will be doing the live Hangout Q&A. It'll be at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, go all the way till 5:30, but usually those Q&As run a little bit longer, but that's the idea, is that they run about an hour. So you can join up. You can either just hang out in the YouTube chat and ask questions there. You can actually come on into the Hangout and everything. I put the links out about an hour before the show starts, and then everybody can jump on it and have a good time. So looking forward to that this Sunday. That'll be great. But yeah, that's one of the rare times where the show is actually video. Even though I keep getting tempted, because I get so many, especially with some of the clips I've put up, I get so many YouTube followers. Maybe I should take advantage of that platform a little bit. I don't know. I know. So YouTube is technically a spun out company from Google. That was before Alphabet was even a thing. Yeah. We talked about video this past week on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode and my issues with that. So fuck it. Anyway, let's do it live. Let's get into this week's Q&A, and we'll get into at least a couple of questions here. A couple of them are rather large, quite frankly, as far as, I don't know how large necessarily they are with their scope, but we'll get into them. I do want to say, so another thing that came out on Patreon recently that it was a question that I had asked, which was, do the patrons mind if we start, and I'll talk about it briefly here, because I'm going to do it. Would the patrons mind? Because you're a patron, and part of the reason that I'm guessing that you want to be a patron, aside from just supporting the show in general, whether it's just a Prime episode or whatever, is because you get this Q&A. You get to ask me a question, and then every Wednesday I try to get to as many of them as I can, and I have a lot. Okay. I'm not going to take any of the questions you've asked me for Patreon, just because I think some of you might feel a little more comfortable because it's behind a paywall. Certainly there's times where I could feel that way too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reintroduce a Q&A segment into the Sovereign Tech Prime episode that comes out every Saturday. I'm not doing this right now. I'm not doing this in like the next couple episodes or anything, but it's going to come up fast. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to get more patrons. Okay. And so I want to, one of the reasons I think people became patrons is because, we get to have whole episodes where it's just the Q&A, because for a lot of people, guess what? Over the years of Sovereign Tech, the Q&A was like their favorite part of the show, because they could ask me anything. It didn't just have to be science or tech related or whatever. And people really, and I'm not bragging. I'm not saying this about myself. I'm saying your words, is that they felt I had an incredibly unique and refreshing take on just about anything that they happen to ask. And so, they really, I got, huge emails from people as far as, questions for the Sovereign Tech Prime Q&A. And so I just want to offer, if that's what gets people interested in becoming patrons, if that's what people love about Sovereign Tech, I guess I'm kind of thinking, well, let's reintroduce it. You're still going to get the Q&A every Wednesday. You're still going to get you message me through Patreon or whatever. You let me know whatever venue you're using that you want it answered on Patreon. And of course, you're going to get the premium cut. There's no way that, especially, if it's a 10, 15 minute, whatever segment every week on the Sovereign Tech Prime show, there's no way that I could possibly get to all of the questions that would get sent into me for the Sovereign Tech Prime episodes. I can't even get to all the ones for the Patreon episodes, okay? But you have a much better chance of your question getting answered, particularly on Patreon, even if sometimes it takes a little while. So I don't think you're really losing anything. If anybody has any real problem with this, and seriously, I'm empathizing with you. If you really want to say to me, no, motherfucker, I'm paying for this privilege, you fucking get, you only do it here and that's it. If you really feel that way, do let me know. I'm not going to judge you on that. All right. I mean, I might disagree, but I'm not going to judge you on that. Or I might, not, yeah, you know what I mean? So anyway, the important thing for me with Patreon is that, and look, I mean, like for the past, few weeks, I've almost been putting out daily content on Patreon too, audio content, quality content, or at least I hope it's quality. I'm just a huge believer in value for value. I want to make sure that you are, getting, that you feel for, if you're doing $1 a month, or some people are doing $20 or $25 a month, Satan bless you, okay, that you're getting value. That's what's most important to me. If you ever feel like you're not getting value, fucking let me know, please. Like, I would love to know that, because I want to hear the argument. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying, let me know if you don't think you're getting value out of this, okay? And I think that value will not go away if I reintroduce, and I'll just try it out, if I reintroduce a Q&A segment into the Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, because I have a ton of thousands of new listeners since the time, I guess it was almost a year and a half ago, when I decided to pull the Sovereign Tech, that I decided to pull the Q&A segment from Sovereign Tech Prime. So we got to shake things up. I mean, it's already past 250. Usually I like to shake it up every 25 episodes. I've gotten a little bit off that schedule, but I hope to get back on it, come 2018. But yeah, I just want to make sure you're getting value for value. I want you to know what's going on, what my thoughts are, what my decision process is, and all that. And yeah, so we're going to reintroduce it, and I think it's going to allow for more patrons. I think it's going to bring on more listeners. I mean, I've had so many people tell me how the Q&A like really inspired them, and so much more. So I think that's going to be great. Anyway, all right, enough of that. Let's get into the question, shall we? There was a lot. This is actually from an email, and there was quite a bit in it, including recommending some alternatives to the Facebook group, which, remember, we also have Reddit, which I know a lot of you have been, kind of slowly signing up for and joining, because it's a secret subreddit. So you have to, you got to message me in some form or fashion, to be able to get it, or to be able to get in. But people pretty much every day there's someone else or a few people that want to come in. So to keep in mind that's a thing. And I think that's been working swimmingly. Of course, the Facebook group is still going, and hey, rock and roll. So, all right, let's get into this email. Okay, here we go. So let's see. I would be interested in hearing you lay out your views on open source and Linux. Maybe go into best bang for the buck hardware, Linux kernels, and where to start to one day contribute to the open source community, and maybe what areas to look into to make some money using computer skills. My question made a lot more sense to me until I started typing it out, I guess, but what I'm hoping for is a Linux special where the beast goes into reasoning behind its choices and sells the open source mindset hard. Okay, and of course they said they loved my Dark Android book, which thank you. So we're going to talk a little Dark Android in the next question. We'll get into some of that. So okay, there's really a lot being asked here, no doubt about that. Okay, first off, maybe the most important part for a lot of people is, okay, how can I start making money with my computer skills that I start learning about when I'm digging into Linux and the open source community and all that? Well, right now is a literal golden opportunity, okay, with the blockchain space or the DAG space, kind of the post-blockchain space, whatever. What's happening with that, and all of that is open source, okay? Like the jobs available for people with any kind of coding knowledge. I mean, there's a job somewhere. It's really remarkable, and especially if you carry with you. I think for a lot of companies, if you carry with you kind of that open source, freedom-oriented mindset, and all of that. And look, a lot of these, and we'll talk about this as I get into this question more. A lot of these technologies, a lot of the, blockchain technologies, whatever else, it's true. I mean, they are, like, a lot of them will first come out with wallets or software or whatever on, to be on Windows initially, But trust me, they're building, everything is being built, with the same programming languages you'd use for Linux, or it's being built for Linux or on Linux for starters, and then it's just getting packaged to where it's easily disseminable to, say, Mac OS or Windows or something like that. This is just the case, so you're not wasting your time if you think, yeah, but most blockchain technologies are only available for, Android, which is actually Linux, or for, for Mac OS or for Windows or something like that. Yeah, but look, say take Google. Well, I was going to say that's actually a piss poor analogy. I was going to say Google. The most used operating system at Google is Ubuntu. Everybody's using Linux. Most people are. So. And with the new wave of technologies and value creation, which is really what blockchain is a big part of, out there, it really is not hard to find a job. As long as you're fairly competent, you got it. Now, as far as like how to learn these skills, okay, so a couple points, and trust me, I will get into like giving you the hard sell of why Linux and all of this. Okay, as far as how to get these skills. Yeah, so don't expect to end up like becoming this great coder. Okay, it's true. It's just like coding is just like it's like basketball, where look, you can have all the talent in the world, all right, but you're and you can do all the practice, put in the 10,000 hours, I don't know, whatever the fuck it takes. Okay, but you're probably not going to be as good at as naturally. Solid at basketball as the kid who's been playing it, down the street, at the local park or something, ever since he was like 5. You're just not going to be. You're not going to deliver the goods like that. Okay, there are coders who have been doing this forever, and it's just like it's almost like a part of their brain function. It comes so easy to them and so effortless. Okay, so yeah, you're not going to become one of the great. Or I shouldn't say that. You're probably not going to become like one of the greatest coders ever or something like that if you're starting now and say it's later on in life or something. If you're a teenager, well, you still got a shot. Okay, but. That's okay. You don't have to be the greatest coder in the world to, develop for, say, the Linux Foundation, some open source software of some kind. Maybe you go work for Red Hat or for blockchain companies or something like that. There's no, you don't have to be great. You just have to be competent. And trust me, there's a lot of people who are who claim to be coders that are not competent. Okay, so you'll still stand a cut above if you know what the fuck you're talking about. So don't worry about that. As far as how to learn, did I get into that? As far as how to learn, this company is not a sponsor or anything like that, but they do great work. There's IT Pro TV. If I think of it, I'll put the link in the show notes for it. There's IT Pro TV, which they give you courses where, you can learn all kinds of different shit when it comes to computing. All the security stuff, all the white hat stuff, all the not so white hat stuff, whatever, how to use Kali Linux. They're phenomenal in what they offer, and it's totally worth the price of admission. It's not free, but it's totally worth it what you get. And I really I think that's the way to go, because you are watching professionals do the business. This is full video streaming, the whole thing. Okay. There's books where you can learn some degree of coding, but if you really want to get nitty gritty and fast track what you've got going on, IT Pro TV, I think it's just, it's a no brainer. And the nice thing is that with a lot, especially in the open source community, particularly, or like the blockchain space or whatever else, like you don't necessarily, with coding, you can kind of prove your chops outside of an interview, and you don't necessarily, you want some kind of title, right? Or you want some kind of like, I guess, IT Pro TV can get you certifications and things like that. You want certification, sure, but like you don't have to have gone to 8 years of college or something to prove you've got what it takes and to be useful for a company in the open source community, okay, or in the blockchain space or something like that. You really don't, and that's nice because it's not true for every industry. Now, so I know this might sound like I did this backwards, but I wanted to let you know first and foremost, Yes, there's money to be made. In fact, great money to be made. I mean, I'm sure you could go work for Zencash. Fuck, one of the actual Sovereign Tech sponsors. Okay, so there's money to be made. It's not hard. There's easier, I should say, ways to learn how to do all of this stuff and how to fast track on board with it. Okay, and you can make it happen. So now let's talk about why Linux, why open source, and then maybe I'll get into some of the hardware and things that people could find useful to use for that. The importance of open source, and I'll say open source in general. All of this broadly applies to Linux as well. I mean, the simple arguments for Linux particularly are that, look, especially now, more so today in 2017, going on 2018 than ever, you are running into where you don't own anything. Okay. Like you really don't own anything. I mean, this has long been true. The first thing that hooked me into wanting to get into like Linux and BSD and all of that back in the 90s was when it came out, even though anybody that was reading could have figured it out, but who reads, the EULAs and the terms of service and all that, is that you pay for a license to get access to Windows. You don't actually own, like your copy, say you bought a copy of Windows 10 or something, or whatever version of Windows, you don't own that. You own a license to access it. You don't actually own, and that license can be revoked by Microsoft. It's right in the EULA. Right in the end user license agreement. That's what EULA stands for. So, like that. And then when you hear, well, Linux, it's yours. You have a great time. Nobody can really take it away from you. There's no licenses involved and it's totally free. It doesn't cost you a dime, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of this is incredibly, attractive. And I mean, that alone, because we're going into a world, we really are. We're going into a world, we're going into the sharing economy. Okay. I mean, we're kind of already there, but look, I mean, I'm to the point, and I know some people are going to say this is nuts when I say this, but I mean it. I am to the point where I think that, probably within the next 100 years, and I know that's a pretty broad spectrum for me to choose within, so it's not that, it's not that impressive of a prediction perhaps. But I think the notion of private property is like that kind of that hard and fast rule of what private property is, which supposedly encompasses all property. Of course, other types of anarchists have different definitions of property. Like there's personal property, which is anything you can carry or that can move, as to where, you have anarcho-capitalists who say that private property is fucking everything. The house, the land, the whole business, blah, 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 even though there's some argument about the land. But regardless, okay, there's different types of property, but just saying that like private property across the board and all this stuff, I think a lot of that, I think that's going to look positively ridiculous to humans to a lot of humans, not all, but to a lot of humans in the next 100 years. Like I think that's going to be seen as crazy as slavery by so many. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I am just telling you that that's the direction that I think things are going. When you look at the way that kids and, teenagers and whatever, at up and coming generations and even not so up and coming generations, the way they even think about like things like music, like all these different things that they want to own, they don't own shit. They just constantly pay for access to stuff. Okay. Much like you pay for access to Windows, even though you never actually own it. They all want Spotify. Like I get fucking annoyed when I hear about it. I'll get a notification or something. Oh, this new album came out and it's only available on Spotify. I'm like, what? So I can't buy it? And no, they don't let you. And it's like, well, what the fuck? I want to own it. I want it to be mine so that I can transfer it. Transfer it around to whatever music service that tickles my fancy. This is something I'm going through right now, where I am transferring a lot of stuff over from a couple different music services, into where I'm backing it up to my NAS, my Synology disk station NAS, which has a great app, mobile app and of course desktop app where I can just play the music wherever I want. It's really it's really awesome, and it all streams from my NAS. So but I want to be able to do that. I don't want to have to rely on Spotify or, pay a monthly fee or, some kind of bullshit like that. But I mean, with so many things, even like with cars and all this other stuff, I mean, like people are really getting past the idea of owning anything, except for maybe their smartphone. But then how many people, especially in America, technically like lease their smartphone, right? So, yeah, I'm just saying, and I kind of went off topic here. I'm just saying that we're really heading into, in my opinion, we're heading into like this, to come up with another post term. These are so cliche, but like a post ownership society. I really think we're heading in that direction. I'm not saying it's a good thing. Okay. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's the direction that I see things going. It won't be for everybody, but for a lot of people, that's the direction things are going. But if you're the kind of person that actually likes to own shit, well, the only operating system you'd want to use is Linux because it's the only one that you really do own, and that you have like complete control over and can really go to town on because it's open source. So you have access to the complete code and you can do to it whatever you want to do. As to where with Windows, and even a lot of aspects of, more sandboxed aspects of Mac OS, you don't have that kind of control if you want it. Look, most people wouldn't know how to do anything, how to make any, would even know how to change the color, say with a terminal open, wouldn't know how to change the color of their taskbar. Okay. If they tried, I know that, but it's nice to have the option that if you wanted to, and if you learned how, you could. Like, I think that's like, I say this all the time. Freedom is choice. Okay, that's all. Freedom equals choice. So, choice is options. So as long as you have the options, I mean, you are technically more free. You have more freedom. That's a great argument in itself, like I said, for Linux. Now, as far as open source goes, the arguments go significantly larger. Okay, I mean, or significantly broader is the term I want to use. All right, because while Linux is nice and it lets you get nitty gritty, you can actually own it, blah, 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 blah. And all of that's great. And I mean, to say nothing of the fact that, what kind of the way Linux just runs cleaner, or Linux or BSD, which is another, we'll be talking about BSD, I think, on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode coming this week. But let's just stick to Linux for this conversation. I mean, it just runs better. Like it's just a far superior running operating system as long as you have the right hardware. We'll get into the right hardware a little bit later on. But now the importance of open source. Okay, so here's the thing, and we've talked about this. This is a subject that has come up over and over and over again on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes. That is, like, especially now in our interconnected world, open source is so much more important than it ever was. And even the companies, the tech giants that push closed source software out on everybody, like Microsoft, Google, and yes, Google has, you could say, well, the bulk of their stuff is open source, right? But there's always that 5% where you don't know what the fuck they're doing and it's closed source and they're never going to open that shit up. So no, they're a closed source company. Okay. Or Google or Apple or whoever. They are putting so much money. Like right now, Microsoft is, I think they're a platinum member of the Linux Foundation, meaning they're giving, $250,000 or something every year to that, if not more. And they are contributing tons of open source code. So does Facebook. So, a lot of these tech giants all do that. Why are they offering up so much open source code? Because I think they know, whether they want to admit it or not. I think they know the simple truth that I know, which is, the only way you know something is secure is if you can look at the code. The more people that can look at a code, the more, the better your chances are of really knowing that it's secure. And add on top of that if, say, you're relying on some specific app or piece of software, if the company that produces that app or software ever goes under, okay, if it's open source, you can just take on the role of the developer and you can just keep on going, and you don't have to rely on some company. Okay. And this, say it's a software standard, an app standard of any kind, whatever, an internet standard of some kind, whatever that is, you can keep using it. You can keep running with it. The world doesn't fucking end. All right. And I think that they're really coming to realize a lot of this. In fact, that's why I've said for the past couple of years, and not only myself, but Microsoft employees have said this, is that the Windows kernel could become open source in the very near future. I still think that that's going to happen. Okay, because it's going to have to happen with everything that's going on, with all the shit in IoT. Like, eventually, just for the world to function as is, okay? And it's interesting to note just how many. Okay, let me finish my sentence. Just for the world to function as is, everything has to be open source. I said this, it's a year ago, I think, since like episode 200. I said, look, the open source movement has won. It's over. It's done. We win. Okay. Yeah, there's still, little skirmishes here and there going on. Okay. But it is absolutely over. The open source movement won, because with the amount of interconnected devices you have, the only way you could possibly be secure is if it's all open source. Everybody can look at the code and make it happen. Now you could say, well, but what if somebody figures out a way to exploit the open source code? You don't understand. That's a logical circle. Okay. If somebody tries to create some kind of exploit on some open source app, because it's open source, people can see that somebody tried the exploit. You see, like there's, security is number one today, and you can only really have security with open source. I mean, that's it. You like there's no argument to go the other way. There just isn't. You are always going to be. I mean, if you want anything remotely like trustless. Like a trustless system where, this just works. This is just secure, blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to think about it so much. The only way that works is if it's open source, because if it's closed source, you have to trust the company. And there's a problem even with that, with software companies themselves. You can kind of run into a degree of issues with that, because what's the incentive of a company? Well, it depends. I mean, in Silicon Valley, you can have very skewed, very strange incentives. Like growth is an incentive. I think that's ridiculous. No, making money is an incentive if you're a business. All right. And, for you to need to make money as a business, yes, you can do it as open source, like we were describing earlier, because you can do value creation. Okay. Which people are, and I'll talk about the other ways that open source companies make money. Okay. But because there's that incentive to make money, if it's closed source, well, there's a lot of people, a lot of governments, corporations, corporatism, whatever, that would be willing to pay to get access to whatever is happening on your platform, in your software, in your app. And that's very attractive if you're not, say, selling millions of copies like you wish you were. Okay. So open source is just, it is essential to having any kind of security, trust, privacy, anonymity, if you want that, whatever. You just have to do it. Like, that's the way things have to be. And I think everybody has finally realized that. And that's why everything is going open source. Now, how do you, and that's really the only argument, you need for it. Okay. To say no, you can get into more kind of ethereal arguments about it, saying, well, software kind of doesn't, like, it's not a physical thing. It doesn't actually exist. It doesn't necessarily cost money to produce. Yes, you have to pay the electric bill and you have to pay for hardware and all that. Okay. But, production itself, like, there's not a whole lot of cost involved. So wait a minute, why does that cost $100? Right? I mean, yes, there's labor costs. You have to pay somebody to produce it and all that stuff. I understand why it costs that, but it's not like you're paying for, a piece of porcelain art or something. So, but that's getting into all kinds of weird realms that aren't even necessary. The security argument alone is enough, okay, as to why everything needs to be open source and why everything is becoming open source and why the tech giants are funding open source, because they know it. And to have even anything that's not even security. How about interoperability? Interoperability between platforms and all that. Yep. You got to open source that shit. You just have to. To make that smooth, to make that really happen, the easiest way to go about that is to just open source all the shit. Now, what's interesting is notice that every single tech giant, Microsoft, Amazon, which you wouldn't expect, Apple, it's part of their DNA. Google, not part of their DNA. Every tech giant is getting into the hardware business. Have you noticed that? Why? Because eventually they know that they can't really charge money for their software. Yeah, they could sell off, through advertising and all that stuff. They could sell off metadata and data on their users. Sure, and they'll do that. Okay, but, how does Apple make all of its money? Doesn't make it with Mac OS. Doesn't make it with iOS. Not, I mean, yeah, they sell apps and they get a cut of that. That's nice. But the bulk of their money comes from iPhone sales, comes from hardware sales. Hardware is where the money is going to continue to be into eternity. It's not going to be in actually trying to sell software. That's just not fucking happening. Unless you're doing a subscription model, which that's a whole other thing. But then if it's a subscription model, you can still get away with that with open source. Now, the way a lot of companies, like say Ubuntu, or what it's not, Canonical is the name of the company that runs Ubuntu. The way they make money and the way that they keep, funding development of Ubuntu is through, they offer support. Not that there's any kind of like maliciousness in their software and they need to help you get rid of it or something, but just how to use it. Canonical pay, you pay, if you're a business and you want to run Ubuntu in your business, which is a great idea, you pay Canonical for, to like if you need to onboard people with the system, or if there's something you're trying to do with Ubuntu or something like that, you would pay Canonical and they would have their technicians, their experts, whatever, help you out with that. That's how they make money. It's a great business model. It's fantastic. Because they're the ones that develop the fucking operating system. They're always going to be more knowledgeable than you. Okay. I mean, just by its very nature. So you pay for, their hot tips and everything. Okay, fine. So money can be made on open source. The argument that, but if everything's open source, nobody's going to make any money is absolute horseshit. I mean, there's no evidence or argument for that in reality. So I hope that makes sense. Now, real quick, I want to say, before we get into what hardware to use, perhaps what distro, distribution, like which version of Linux, whatever that you want to use, before I get into that, I do want to say, look, I'm not saying that using Mac OS or using Windows is some kind of grand evil. Okay. Everybody has different tolerance levels, for what they find acceptable, say breaches, or what they find acceptable intrusions into their life. Okay. B, the most important, I mean, this is, I don't know if we should call this like Harlan's Law or something, but Harlan Ellison made a great point 20 years ago. Okay. Where he said, people have the right to only engage with the technological level that works for them. Okay, so fine. Like, and that can go across the board. Meaning, you use what works for you. That's all that really means, is use what works for you. If Windows is what allows you to get so much shit done, to do tremendous activism, to make money, to do whatever you're doing, then fucking use Windows. Don't listen to me. I have a Windows machine. Are you kidding? Some of the best cryptographers and security specialists in the world all have, Windows machines. Don't let them fool you. Okay. Steve Gibson has Windows machines. Like I said, I have multiple Windows machines. I mean, yeah, that's not the only thing I have. And that's the other thing too, is that like, we really are in a world where, look, one person owning multiple computers is becoming the norm, just like TVs, 30 years ago, where, oh yeah, no, most households have 2 or 3 TVs, right? Or, that would be the claim that would get made by Time Magazine or some horseshit. So, yeah, I mean, because somebody cracks open, I mean, if you're walking around and because, I mean, this kind of elitism is dying, thankfully, it seems anyway, where, you walk into somewhere and, oh, they have a Windows machine? What they're not using Linux? What the fuck is wrong with them? You don't know what they have at home. You have no idea. I mean, my favorite machine that I use has OpenBSD on it. Nobody fucking well, yeah, I mean, there's people that use OpenBSD. There's a lot of people. But most people don't even bother. I mean, most people don't even realize that can be a desktop operating system. They have no fucking clue. You're never going to see me walking around with my OpenBSD machine. Well, I mean, maybe sometimes, but super rare. People can use whatever they want to use. Whatever makes shit work for you, whatever makes your world go round and round, you use it. Whether it's Mac OS, whether it's Windows, whether it's Linux, BSD, whatever. Okay? So don't confuse what I'm saying necessarily for some kind of like moral, ethical argument or something like that. And I'm not saying the emailer was, and this is just for all the listeners, okay? And I was, admittedly, like with the show, with Sovereign Tech, I was kind of falling into that trap for a little while where I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you if you're using Windows? I was kind of falling into that for a couple of years. And no, use what works for you. That's your right, if there are rights. There aren't, but if there were. Okay. So, but is using Linux a better idea? Well, yes, of course it is. Okay. I mean, like I hope I've already made the case of why it's such a great idea to do that. In fact, it's funny. I get a lot of ANCAPs who think that like open source is socialism. And I'm like, no, actually, all of your closed source companies that are charging you for licenses and you can't actually own the shit, they're the socialists. What the fuck is wrong? What are you talking about, you idiot? Linux is like, at the end of the day, in many ways, is sort of the, for some people, it could be described as the ANCAP dream. I don't want to say that because I don't know that ANCAP necessarily is like is a positive adjective. Okay, but I'm not saying it's a pejorative, but I'm just saying. Anyway, I guess I should say title, not adjective. Whatever. Anyway, let's talk about what hardware to get. So you have a few options. Okay, there is, and again, if I can think of it, I'll put links in the show notes. Otherwise, they're easy enough to find on DuckDuckGo. Ooh, should you be using DuckDuckGo? Yes. There is System 76. Okay, which is there's a website, System76. That's the numerals 76.com. Which they're kind of the premier. They're sort of the Apple of the Linux world as far as hardware goes. Like their laptops are in many ways kind of the gold standard of using Linux. Now, we've heard recently about the concerns over Intel's management engine, how there's so many different exploits involved with that. If you're concerned about that, okay, like those exploits with against modern processors, yeah, System 76 isn't the way to go. They're not really solving that. Okay, there is. Let's see, there's a company called Technoethical, and that's at technoethical.com, which they sell T500s, they sell T400s, T400S. They sell older laptops, older ThinkPad laptops, which they have rebranded, and they have backwards engineered the BIOS on it and the firmware on the hardware to what they call LibreBoot. Okay, which is where, yes, they have completely removed any proprietary, non-open source horseshit that that Intel had put on those, or that Intel has in those laptops. So those are the best. Like, in fact, they even have a certification called Respects Your Freedom. Okay, that's from the Free Software Foundation. Another great resource to look at, fsf.org, the Free Software Foundation. They certify it as this is completely open source, is the best hardware, blah, blah, blah. And it's sad, and it's enlightening in a way too, and telling that to get completely open hardware, generally you've got to buy computers from almost 10 years ago. That's how bad of a situation we're in with like this kind of closed source hardware. That's going on, and there's a lot of arguments to be had around that, but anyway, there is a modern company called Purism. I think it's PURI.SM is their website. They sell the Librem models, like the Librem 13. I think they have the Librem 11, which is like a tablet, and they have the Librem 15. Now, they are more modern hardware. Like they have graphics cards. No, they don't have graphics cards. They have the HD 520s in them, the Intel HD 520s. They have gotten rid of. Their claim is they've gotten rid of the proprietary nonsense like the Intel management engine and all of that. I've had great reviews from great friends over I have not used a Librem laptop yet myself, but that's something to consider. You are going to pay a premium for that though. A LibreBoot computer is going to run you $700, something like that. A Purism, a Librem, not LibreBoot, but Librem laptop is going to run you from like $1,400 and up. Okay, so that, keep those in mind. System 76 that I mentioned earlier, they have computers starting at like $600, and they go up from there. But the nice thing about it, I mean, one of the challenges, there's one other company I'm just going to mention it quick. There's ZaReason, ZaReason.com. You can check them out as well. They're just like System 76. They're not like Technoethical or like Purism with their Librem laptops. But anyway, those, one of the challenges with Linux is that, because I mean, you could buy any computer you want, right? You could buy a $200, $300 little Asus laptop and you could install Linux on it. Here's the thing, is that Linux does admittedly at times, depending upon the hardware, and in the PC space, there's so many different types, so many different hardware modules, so much different hardware, that it can be a challenge to get everything working smoothly. Like maybe it doesn't recognize your graphics card. Maybe, and this is the most common, maybe it doesn't recognize the chipset for just for your touchpad on your laptop. I mean, it can be that bad. Okay, that's why it's nice to buy from a company, say Technoethical or System 76 or Za Reason or Librem or Purism or something like that. Because when you buy it, out of the box, everything, all the drivers, all that shit, everything's working smooth. All the hardware's working as it should. Okay, that's the advantage there. So those are the areas that I would look in. If you want to get really advanced and, try out, buy like a cheap little computer and then try installing Linux and whatever on it and going from there. Yeah, you could certainly give that a crack. That's up to you. There's an old saying, you either spend money or you spend time. Well, you can spend, you could spend less money and spend more time doing it yourself, or you can spend the money and spend more money and spend less time and get it, out of the box from one of the companies that I mentioned, as far as how that goes. So there's that. That's my recommendation as far as hardware. Now, if you're talking about different, there wasn't any clarity necessarily on this. If you're talking about like different hardware categories, like, well, can I get a virtual assistant speaker like a Sonos or something that is Linux and all this different? Well, no. Like when you get into open source and when you get into open source hardware and all that, the main areas of concern seem to be smartphones and laptops or, PCs in general. And there's not a whole lot of options really outside of that, nor is it like a category that I don't keep a close eye on those other categories as far as open source goes. So I can't really speak to that. Now, I can speak to the smartphone, and this actually gets to our second question, which I recently, in fact, I talked about this on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode. I said that, a great option if you want to get a smartphone today, and there's a lot of reasons to do this. Again, more of that full-on open source, etc. A great option for you to do today would be to get a cheaper smartphone that runs Lineage OS. Okay, Lineage OS is the continuation of CyanogenMod. Most people know what CyanogenMod was, or at least they've heard of it over the years. Which CyanogenMod is it's an Android-based operating system. It's Android, but it's kind of an Android alternative. Like I think it's almost a misnomer to call it Android, because it's not, or at least it's not Google's Android. How about that? But it's also not AOSP, right? Which the Android open source project, which, let's be clear about this. Android is an open source operating system to a degree. Okay, the AOSP versions of Android, which is not what usually comes on your phone. Okay, AOSP is an open source operating system. The Android you get when you buy the new Samsung or whatever or the Pixel or whatever the fuck you buy is not 100% open source. There's a lot of custom Google code on there, and it's been getting worse and worse over the years. Okay. Now, Lineage OS is something that you can install on an Android phone. It runs Android apps. You can even put the Google Play Store in there if you want. All of that. All right. But it is more open source, right, than Google's version of Android, and it gives you a lot more options and a lot more control. It's really, really handy. So also there's a great argument because Lineage OS is such a powerful open source community driven operating system that when there have been at various times, including very recently, which we've talked about on Sovereign Tech, when there's been a major exploit or crack or security problem with Android, Lineage OS has often updated its code before Google has even updated Android. So there's great argument. Again, that fits in with the, why open source? Because it's more secure, because it can be, because people can act on it, and you don't have to wait for Google. You can just do it your goddamn self. And that's one of the main reasons that I've really enjoyed, switching over to Lineage OS recently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, what my experience has been so far with Lineage OS and what phone that I acquired. Now, if you want to check out Lineage OS yourself, you can go to lineageos.org. That's the website, and that'll help you find what you want. Now, they list off a bunch of different, and they support probably 100, if not more than that, devices for Lineage OS to where you can install that. Lineage OS itself is based right now it's at version 14.1, which is really version 7.1 of Android. When version 15 of Lineage OS comes out, that'll be based on Oreo. That'll be based on Android 8.0, hopefully 8.1. So that's really what you're getting out of the box here. But again, because it's so open source, the development teams, the community for Lineage OS can make updates that even Google's Android Oreo doesn't have in it yet. Okay, so that's a great advantage. Now, the phone that I personally went with, and there's a few different options. There's a couple. I'm going to list off a couple. Okay, the phone that I went with to run a Lineage OS phone is the LeEcho, which I'm not going to get into the story behind them right now. The LeEcho Pro 3, and you can get it for about $200, and it's a very nice phone. It has 64 gig of onboard storage, 4 gig of RAM, has a gorgeous, actually it's a very pretty 1080p screen, which is good. It's not draining battery like the UH or the QHD screens or the 4K screens. The camera on it is very good. It does have a fingerprint sensor. Of course, I don't fucking activate that ever because biometrics are the worst security exploit in the history of mankind. It has all the accoutrement. It has NFC, Bluetooth, latest versions of Bluetooth and all that. It has everything you could, generally that any other smartphone, any little, block of sensors that warms up your pocket, has on it. So, it's all there, and it's nice, and it's a metal body, even though I put it in an even more metal case, and it has USB-C if you're curious about that. For some people, that's an advantage. For some people, it's a disadvantage. I've recently entered the foray of the USB-C world, and so now pretty much everything I buy is, I'm making sure is USB-C going forward. So that includes like the Trezor 2, which is that's the new or the Trezor T, which we announced or which we talked about on Sovereign Tech a couple episodes back briefly. I did pre-order one of those. Another one, what might be for some, and I am totally empathetic to this, flaw that this phone, the LeEcho Pro 3 has, is it does not have a 1/8 jack. It does not have a headphone jack. Okay. I dealt with that, and I was finally accepting of that, mainly because I've been using Bluetooth headphones so often over the past few months. I have my Plantronics Bluetooth headphones that are just life-changing for me, especially during my workouts and all that. I mean, it completely changes the game, for me, and just offers so much freedom and actually fairly good sound. Even though Bluetooth, let's be clear here, Bluetooth headphones, they cannot possibly, and I don't think it'll ever be true, they cannot possibly match the quality of a good hardline, just like wireless is never going to really reach the speeds of, plugging in a 10 gigabit Ethernet cord or something. Okay. But you can kind of do tricks with the software with Bluetooth headphones that make it sound better than it actually is, better than the actual data stream is allowing for. And so I've been nothing but pleased with my Plantronics Bluetooth headphones. So that wasn't so much of an issue for me. LeEcho does, when you buy the phone new anyway, it does come with a pair of USB-C headphones that you can plug into USB-C. Of course, that doesn't allow you to charge it and have that at the same time. You can buy adapters that will plug into USB-C that will allow you to have your phone charging and give you a 1/8 port at the same time. That's certainly a possibility, that you can run with. But I get it. You don't want to have dongles running around. I totally understand. LeEcho does also offer a dongle with it that has a USB-C adapter that goes to a 1/8 jack. It doesn't split, but it goes to the 1/8 jack. So if you have great, standard headphones, then you can, you could still use it with this, just you won't be charging it at the same time based on what comes in the box for the phone. So now the phone's performance overall is phenomenal. Granted, I didn't use it with its built-in software. Here's the thing, is Echo is a company that is pretty much tanking. It's going out of business. That's why you can get part of the reason you can get their phone so inexpensively. Okay. Because it's going out of business, normally I would not recommend that you buy this phone. I don't care about the fact that it comes from a Chinese company. You're crazy if that's a concern for you. No, I'm sorry. The Americans are spying on you way more than you can imagine. Okay. And that'd be on an LG phone or Samsung or whatever. Being concerned about the Chinese and not thinking twice about, the NSA is ridiculous. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend this phone normally, because you're never going to get security patches or updates or anything like that to it, because again, the company's tanking. But if you're using it to install Lineage OS on instead of stock Android, Google's Android, then it becomes a much more interesting prospect, because the community is going to support this. Like, Lineage OS will update. Okay. To some degree, you still have to have the Lineage community support the hardware that you're using. Like, there is over time where, say, an older phone isn't going to get the next version of Lineage or something. Yep, that happens, just like it happens with Android and everything. But this is such a fairly powerful phone that there's no reason not to support it. And I think it is selling, and I think it is still so popular because people are buying it for a Lineage OS phone. Because the price is so low, and the hardware and all of that, and the build quality is really, really solid for what it is. So Lineage OS solves that software problem here. Now, as far as using Lineage, what's my experience with that? Overall, it's really been great. It's very fast. It has a lot of really fun little features built into it. And I'm coming off of I was using a Moto E4, which isn't as premium a phone. But that phone was running Android 7.1.1. So other than Oreo, it was running the latest version of Android. And Lineage OS just has a lot of nice little features. Like I mentioned about the Bluetooth headphones, what's really cool is there will, next to the Bluetooth symbol in the notifications bar on the phone in Lineage OS, it'll actually show power bars for your Bluetooth devices. Like it's easy enough to find out how much time I have left, what the battery life is on my Bluetooth headphones just by pressing a little button on it, and it tells me. But there it is right on my screen. I think that those kind of little touches are really nice. When I'm playing music, okay, and I go to the lock screen or something, the lock screen will actually have an equalizer. Or not an equalizer, we'll have a spectrometer, right? Have a little animation, equalizer animation going that'll let you see everything, watch the music or the podcast or whatever kind of flow. And it works with, anything that's putting out audio. That's a really fun little feature. It does have a built-in equalizer. It has, of course, the ability to tether without having to pay for a tethering plan, because it just does it at the OS level. A lot of that is just a lot of those nice little touches had just been, it's really slick, like, and it's smooth and it's fast. I have no qualms about it. Now, something that if you haven't used an alternative Android operating system, even though they're still kind of Android, if you haven't used one since, like, say, CyanogenMod was a thing, something I want you to be aware of is that there used to be, like, there's 3 types of releases for OS versions for CyanogenMod. Like, there was stable, there was like the M, I forget what the M stood for. Whereas like moderately stable, that's not what the M stood for, but I forget. But it's something you could count on a little bit more like a beta. And then there were the nightlies, which were the nightly releases, which were like these really, like almost every day there'd be little improvements, and you could keep updating your operating system. Now Lineage OS just does nightlies. Okay, like now there's no more stable releases, there's no more M releases or anything like that. It's all nightlies. So don't get scared if you see that. But they're not nightlies like where it's really extreme stuff. Now they're just putting out nightlies, not on a nightly basis, but on a basis where when there's a significant enough update, they push it. So they don't wait anymore. And I think that that's fine. And I haven't had call drops. I haven't had data drops. I haven't had any of that kind of bullshit happen. And I'm running, a nightly from November 11th. And how many people can say that the operating system they're running on their phone is like that up to date, like by the week? Very few. Not even the Pixel and Nexus crowd, I think, can make that kind of claim. It's really nice, and you're getting those security updates, which I think is really cool. So now there are a couple problems with running Lineage OS, even if you didn't technically necessarily root the phone. Okay, I can't. There are some apps that I cannot run, that I either can't run or can't even install. Like, I put the Google Play Store on it. You don't have to put the Google Play Store on it. You could put F-Droid on there, and then you're fine as well. It already has contacts, phone, text messaging app. I mean, it has a ton of stuff, nicely built into it anyway, so you don't even really need to put in anything if you don't want to. Okay, but I've noticed that, and because I've been testing it, okay, I've done a couple of different test modes with this so far. With the Google Play Store, so the only software I've had a hard time, all right, you can't put Netflix on it. If you watch Netflix on your phone a lot, don't run Lineage OS. There's really not much you can do about that. It's an ongoing battle. It's ugly. There's some workarounds that you hear about, but I don't know. I mean, that's understand this takes a little bit of technical level to install Lineage OS on a device. Unless it's like a Nexus device, then I think there's been great software where it allows it to be like kind of all in one and done. But otherwise, you're going to be breaking open some terminals, and you're going to be doing some work. I don't think it's hard as far as hard things to do on a computer go, but it's also not the easiest thing in the world either. Okay, so keep that in mind. But there is a great community around it with great tutorials and all that can really help you out. And so, if you have a modicum of skill, I think you can do it. Anyway, so Netflix, you can't run Netflix on it. Problem one. For me, not a problem. I don't give a shit. The other thing is that, and this is one that kind of affects me, you can't run any Nintendo apps on there. And I'm sure there's other companies that do the same thing, where if they detect that you have a rooted device or that you're running a custom ROM, they won't let their software boot up. And that is a problem. I can't run Miitomo, which I run Miitomo daily. I run Miitomo. That's how I make the cover art for the show. That's how I do all kinds of things. I cannot run it on a Lineage OS device. That, for me, kind of sucks. I don't need to play Super Mario Run. I know the new Animal Crossing game came out and all that. I don't need to play those. I have a 3DS, or actually a 2DS XL to do a lot of that. But, not those games specifically, but to get my Nintendo fix. But not being able to run Miitomo, that kind of sucks. That kind of sucks for me. So that's been a little bit of an issue. But other than that, and maybe here and there, certain apps don't share that well between each other. It's smooth as butter. With the things that matter, it runs great. I mean, it runs really great. Like, it's crazy how just how good that goes. And it's not because I'm upgrading from a Moto E4 or something like that. Now, as far as other phones, if you want to, say you don't want to get a Echo Pro 3 for some reason, you want to try a different phone of some kind and run Lineage OS. Okay, there's other options for this. You could get OnePlus. That's a great phone company that puts out great hardware at a lower price. You could get your hands on that. They run Lineage OS very well. And of course they have Oxygen OS, which gives you that's what it comes with stock, which gives you a lot of options that Lineage OS has out of the gate anyway. Okay, so that's certainly an option to go with. Go ahead. You could, I think running into, there's some LG phones you can get away with. Samsung has tried to kind of block it, but people have worked around it. I wouldn't, if you're running Lineage OS, I don't know that I'd spend all the money on a fucking Samsung Galaxy whatever to put Lineage OS on it. That just doesn't make sense to me. But if you wanted to, get like a higher end Sony phone, something in their Xperia line, or something from the Moto line, particularly, say from Lenovo or from Motorola, but it's Lenovo. Those are the areas I would look. Or like I said, right now, in my opinion, the two best phones for putting custom ROMs on are OnePlus and the Echo Pro 3. I really think that those are top drawer as far as that goes. So, my experience has been very good, other than those few little issues. But there's just so many nice little things. And in fact, I've done a couple things. I tried running it without the Google Play Store on there first. and I ran it with just F-Droid, and it was beautiful, using completely open source software and all of that. And you have the web browser that's built in, and everything pretty much worked. That was fine. And then what I wanted to try, just to see what this is like, because Microsoft has been pushing so hard for the ability for you to carry on your experience from your mobile phone to your desktop, your laptop computer or something running Windows 10. And so I wanted to try this. And in fact, I even heard Satya Nadella crack some joke at some conference where he pulled out an iPhone and he said, I call this an iPhone Pro. And what he meant by that is it's an iPhone that's using all Microsoft, software on top of iOS. And I thought that was actually, I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. And I wanted to try that with this. So I made, what one could, maybe you could call it an Android Pro or something like that, to use Satya Nadella's term, where I just loaded it with Microsoft software. Now, this is something I've talked about for years, and it's been this way for years, where you can literally replace, other than the Google Play Store, you can replace everything that Google offers you on your Android device with something from Microsoft. You want Google Goggles or Google Lens or whatever the fuck they're called, Google Translate, you have Microsoft Translate. You have Office Lens. You want Google Docs on there, you have the entire Microsoft Office suite available for free on your phone. You want Google Drive, you've got OneDrive that you can install on there. You want like your own launcher instead of the Google Now launcher, whatever the fuck they're calling that now. Well, Microsoft now has their Microsoft launcher, which I'm actually running on this Lineage OS machine right now. And I know somebody's going to say, why even run Lineage OS if you're just going to put Microsoft software on there? I'm testing shit out. Calm down. And like I'm running Groove Music and a bunch of other stuff. Like I'm trying it out. Okay, how does this work? And I have Cortana on there. How does this work as a Microsoft phone? And what does that interoperability look like between a Windows 10 desktop and a smartphone that is using predominantly Microsoft apps? Obviously, I have other apps on there. I mean, there's Instagram on there. There's all this other stuff, Line Messenger and Waze and whatever. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, and the Microsoft Pro Lineage OS phone, whatever, right now, I mean, I get it. I get the advantage. I get why it's so nice. I'm not saying I'm going to stick with it, okay? But I'm trying it out so I can report back on it. But so far, yeah, this is really convenient. And, and you can even run, like I said, you can run Microsoft Edge, the web browser on there, and that can go to Edge on your Windows 10 device if you use Edge. Or if you're using Firefox, like right now I'm using Firefox Quantum on pretty much any device I can throw it on. I put Firefox. I'm not using Microsoft Edge because that's in preview and it's still missing some things, so I don't recommend it as a daily driver as far as mobile web browsers go on your device. But I put, the Firefox Quantum version on Android, and it's awesome. And the interoperability between the two is absolutely phenomenal. It's working really, really well. Another thing that's working really well that kind of almost defeats the purpose of running or putting Cortana anyway on a smartphone if you use a Windows 10 laptop or computer, is so something Cortana will do is it will actually push your text messages, your SMS text messages, to your Windows 10 device, and you can actually communicate and you can respond and type out from your action bar, whatever that comes up on your Windows 10 PC. Okay. Now, what I've done is I'm actually trying to use, and there's been problems with this in the past, I'm trying to use Signal as both my main way that I like to communicate through Signal messaging, as well as have it, because it can do this, as well as have it be my main SMS app. Okay. Now, because of that, it puts those SMSs in what could be called the secure enclave of the Signal app. So I can't do the responding from the action bar on my Windows 10 device when I get SMS messages because they're stuck within Signal. Fortunately, it seems that the text messages that I've been getting do come into Signal, and I receive them and I can send out and talk to people via SMS without sending them Signal encrypted messages if I don't want to. And that's great, because actually for a while this was a problem that I had noticed that if both sides that are text messaging with SMS, if both sides weren't using Signal, somebody wouldn't receive the message, or they wouldn't get the response or something like that. It was a real problem. That seems to have been solved with this. So fingers crossed. I'll let you know if I find out quite differently about that. But yeah, by and large, I have the Microsoft launcher on there and all that, and everything is working like a dream, and it works very, very well. And the continue to PC kind of experience that Microsoft built into it has been doing nicely. And so I get it. Again, I'm almost guaranteed I'm not going to stick with it, but I understand what Microsoft is trying to do, and they're doing it fairly well. And I can see why a lot of people would be really attracted to it, because it's the integration really that MacBook users have with their iPhones, where they're so interoperable instantaneously. And Microsoft's just offering the same thing, but with Android and your Windows 10 PC. So anyway, Lineage OS, very nice. I have only nice things to say about it. Especially, it was really, really buttery when I was just running F-Droid. Then things were really nice. But I understand that, people want to install Facebook Messenger, unfortunately, and they want to install a bunch of other crap. And so whatever, go for it. Progressive web apps, which are pretty much just shortcuts to some link in your web browser that give you like full functionality of a standard mobile app, like say the progressive web app of Twitter. You just go to m.twitter.com and you would hot link that to your or you create a shortcut for that on your home screen on your phone, and m.twitter.com works more or less just like the Twitter app. Progressive web apps are really going to make things like Lineage OS, in my opinion, way more viable as well. And progressive web apps is where everything's kind of going. You're not really going to be installing apps as much, I think, in the future. It seems so many people are putting so much development into this that I can't see why it's not going to work out this way. But I could be wrong about that. I'm not going to make it a hard prediction like I do with some things. But again, I'm not really having any issues running most of the apps on here. You can't do Netflix, can't do the Nintendo apps and all that, and that could be a deal breaker for a lot of people. But and I understand, okay. But no real problem. So I'm loving it. I'm having a great time with it. No McDonald's quote there. Gotcha. But yeah, okay. So, all right, that's it for this episode. We just talked all open source the whole time with some future predictions, I guess. But hey, it's your questions. I just answer them. There will be the final part to the Occult Technology of Power will be getting released this week on Sovereign Tech. We also have a Relationship Rhombus episode to release to you at some point. And of course, don't forget, we have the live Hangout Q&A coming up this Sunday, the 26th, at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And then I got a Dynamite Sovereign Tech Prime episode lined up for you. And of course, there'll be a new Sex and Science Hour. So if you want content, I got you covered, baby. Anyway, I will see you on the other side. Woo!